That is about the commercial dispute resolution in PRC under the outbreak of coronavirus. I think that since the beginning of this year and almost 6 months passes, and I can say that unfortunately, even in China, that the last week we have headache in Beijing for the second round of the outbreak of coronavirus. So this year, lots of the businessmen has been heavily impacted by this coronavirus. So what I want to share with you is some legal issues about the commercial dispute resolutions under this particular moment. First of all, I think that you may know that China is the continental law system. So the word force majeure now is very hot, not only in China, but also in many foreign countries, because everyone would like to know that whether this coronavirus or the control actions of coronavirus can be deemed as kind of the force majeure or the other similar principle under the other jurisdictions. So first of all, I would like to share with you that under PRC law, whether this coronavirus or the relevant control actions can be deemed as force majeure or can be deemed as another legal notions, change of circumstance under PRC law. First of all, let's see two articles. One is the 117 of the contract law of PRC. The other is the article 180 of the civil code of PRC. As you know that the civil code has been just passed by the National Congress in China last month. That is a milestone for Chinese codification of the civil law. In these two very important laws, we can find out that under Chinese law, that force majeure has its legal meaning very clearly. And we understand that they have three elements which are very important. I can say that's kind of the three characters to tell whether this kind of the event can be deemed as force majeure or not under PRC law. The first one is that this kind of event should be objective circumstance. That means that it is not created by any human beings or anyone. That is the first thing that's first standard. The second and very important element is that this kind of the events cannot be foreseeable. So we cannot foresee it before. And I think that the third one is that this kind of the event is unavoidable and insurmountable. That means that even we try our best, we cannot avoid this event. And we cannot overcome it. We cannot resolve this problem. So that is the three key elements to distinguish, to tell the force majeure and the PRC law. And also by this Article 590 of the Civil Code, we understand that under these force majeure situations, a notice should be given to the other party in time, so as to reduce the losses as soon as possible. And the kind of the proof burden are very important and essential for the party who would like to allege this kind of the events, or we can say directly the coronavirus is kind of the force majeure. And we can see also from the article that the legal consequence, if a party is successfully alleged that this coronavirus is force majeure, he could be partially or wholly exempt from his liability. So that is the legal consequence if it's successfully claimed that is kind of the force majeure. But under not only in the force majeure, under Chinese law, we have another very similar principle, that is the change of circumstance. So what is the difference between the force majeure and change of circumstance? I can say that you can see that, as I mentioned just now, we have three very important elements to tell whether it is a force majeure or not, and also the standards are quite strict or rigorous. So we cannot say that every many events they cannot be deemed as force majeure, but it did heavily make influence on the execution of the contract. And also it makes sometimes that the purpose of the contract cannot be achieved. So in this way, that's the Chinese court make additional principle on top of the force majeure to say that if some events cannot be deemed as the force majeure, but actually this kind of the event seriously has impact on the parties under contracts, and make significantly and manifestly unfair to the relevant party who continue to performance the contracts. And under such scenario, under such circumstance, that the court in China will confirm that this kind of contracts can be modified or terminated. So that is the great principle under a civil law system. I can say that under the continental law system, that is the principle of fairness. That is principle of fairness. So that is two very important principles under Chinese law. One is force majeure, and the other is the change of the circumstance can be used or applied under this coronavirus pandemic situation. So in practice, I just make a very brief summary here for the application of these two principles. The first is that the fundamental purpose of the contracts are very important. If this coronavirus outbreak make this kind of the contracts, the purpose of this kind of contracts cannot be achieved. So the force majeure can be evoked to request for termination of the contract. But on the other hand, if under this coronavirus, even this outbreak, that the contract is still can be, or we say is still enforceable, the performance will cause obvious unfair consequence. So in this way, the change of the circumstance, this principle can be used or applied in this circumstance to supplement that kind of the coronavirus event itself, or the control of the coronavirus actions will make difficulties on the performance or the execution of the contract. This principle of the change of circumstance can be used instead of force majeure itself. So that is the very brief summary about the application of these two principles.